I am sure you have heard the phrase, money can't buy you happiness. You've heard the phrase. That said, it sure can help a little bit. There is something called the golden triangle of happiness. And actually, financial stability features prominently in this golden triangle. It's something that the folks over at Home Equity Bank have been doing a lot of work on, a lot of research into. And we're going to talk about that, what's in the triangle and how it actually works in the real world. Vivianne Gauci is Senior Vice President of Home Equity Bank, and she joins us now to talk about it. Hello there.
Hi, Bruce. Thanks for having me.
I see this phrase, the golden triangle of happiness, and it makes me think of the opposite of the Bermuda Triangle of despair. Is that
Oh
the
my
simplest way to
gosh.
define it?
I mean, only in the fact that it's a triangle.
It's a
It's-
triangle.
and it's
It's a
got three
triangle.
points. It's 3 points. So that's where the similarities end, though, because what we look at when we looked at the golden triangle of happiness, it was a study done by Deakin University in Australia, and we loved the framework of it so much because
Hmm.
it's very simple in its approach, but it's pretty comprehensive. And so if you think about a triangle, 3 points,
Yep.
and really what you're talking about are three things that drive our level of happiness.
Hmm.
And one of the points is financial stability. The other point is quality connections. And then the third point is our sense of purpose. And so the idea being that if you have these three elements and they're in relative balance, then chances are you are living a happy life.
Ooh, that's good. We want
Yes,
that.
yes,
So you took that framework and you did some research on that
absolutely.
framework, and there's some interesting findings here, both in aggregate, but also in terms of some of the demographic splits. Tell us about what you learned.
Absolutely. Well, the idea, and it again, this wasn't a finding that really surprised us too much because I don't know if you've heard of the U shape that we have when the happiness curve, and it tends to be U-shaped. And so, we're really happy when we're young, and then we kind of, start going through life, and there's a lot that's happening to us, and then we kind of tend to be less happy in midlife, and then as we get older, we tend to
Mm.
find that happiness again. And so what we found was very similar to those findings, and that what we found was, older Canadians tend to be very happy in general, and what was even more interesting was that the older we are, the happier we tend to be. And so, what we found though, in general, older Canadians very happy. And then within that, we started to dive into some of the nuances and what made up that factor using that golden triangle of
And
happiness.
what are some of the nuances that you found?
Well, so we looked at financial stability. And so what we found there was when we asked people in their 50s if they felt, very happy or excellent about their financial situation, we found just about under 50% of people in their 50s said yes, they're feeling pretty good about their finances. But then when we asked people in their 70s, that number jumped to just under 70%.
Hmm.
So there you started to see some of that correlation between, when you're the younger older Canadians versus the older Canadians, and the older Canadians tended to win in that realm. And then we looked at another point in the triangle, which was the quality connections. And there, once again, we tended to see, both sides of the spectrum felt like they had a good friend group, but definitely the older Canadians, those in their 70s, actually had 17% higher level of quality connections than those in their 50s. And then finally, this whole concept of the sense of purpose. And there we kind of asked a variety of different questions, but the one that we kind of picked on this one was whether or not people felt like they were giving back to their community, or how
Hmm.
much they gave back to their community. And there, once again, we saw that people in their 50s were less likely to do this versus those in their 70s. So, in terms of giving to charities or participating in volunteer events, things like that. So, you tended to see a bit of a disconnect there between those two age groups.
Hmm.
So, it was really interesting to see those nuances.
It's interesting. My frame of reference are my parents. They're both 88. They are both happy people, different
Yes.
situations in terms of their physical health, but they're both
Mhm.
happy people. I'm surprised that health didn't play a bigger part because I know a lot of people as we get on in decades, just there's just more to deal with on that front.
Yeah, I tend to agree, and I think there's an element of all-encompassingness that happens with this triangle, right? So if you are not as socially connected, you're gonna have struggle from a mental health perspective, as an example. And also, maybe if you don't have those quality of connections, you're not going to be able to point out or be able to identify some of the early signals of, something's wrong here. Maybe it's something to get checked out. So there's that sense of purpose, again, will help drive mental health and also be able to keep you healthy because you're active, you're engaged, you're involved. And then the financial stability element of it, obviously, the more financially stable you are, the more you're able to get yourself support when needed if you are incurring some issues with your health. But definitely, I mean, if you're not healthy, everything else falls
Yeah.
apart.
Right. There are a couple other nuances that I see in the findings that are interesting to me. One is being able to handle a major unexpected expense. I can imagine how stressful that would be if you need a new roof and you don't have the wiggle room to get that. There were some demographic insights on that particular variable. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was really, really interesting. I mean, we asked the question, would you be able to handle an unexpected expense? And there, once again, we saw that individuals in their 70s were feeling much better equipped to handle unexpected expenses versus those in their 50s.
Hmm. It's interesting because they're probably on a fixed income. So I guess you'd have to assume that they've reached a point where their net nest egg is sufficient that they've got that backstop. They just aren't going to be doing that by working a little bit harder or working a little bit, longer hours to pay for that roof. They just have some comfort that they've got the savings. Is that
Yeah,
fair?
there's some things that we uncovered about people in their 50s that drive some of these uncertainties and some of these differences. I would say when you're in your 50s, you're still going through some key major life events. And so part of it is also the level of uncertainty about what's to
Mm.
come.
Yeah.
Am I going to be able to manage expenses down the road? It's not just about the here and now, it's about the down the road. And I think as you're older, you're feeling more confident. You've been doing this for a while in this stage of your life, and you kind of understand the ebbs and flows. You've been without maybe the working level income that you've been used to, and you're used to living life in a certain way. And so
Mm.
when something does come up, you're just feeling better equipped to deal with it because that's been happening to you for the last 20 years, really.
Right.
And you've
Right.
been able to manage it. So you're feeling more confident, you're feeling better equipped to be able to deal with those things as they come up.
The business that you're in has you be very focused on people's homes, HomeEquity Bank, and the kinds of people who call you and engage with you are people who
Mhm.
want to live in your homes. There was
Yes.
one finding that I wanted you to speak
Mhm.
to is around living in homes and how that is connected to the quality connections part that is so critical in the Golden Triangle.
Well, it's so important, Bruce, because we realize, at Home Equity Bank, because of our product suite, we understand the importance of home not just from a financial perspective, but as part of the social fabric of who you are as an individual. And so, first of all, there's an emotional component. You have memories, you have a lifetime in this home. You also have a sense of comfort that you know where everything is and where to find things. And that's so important as we age. And then there's that social fabric, which is the external piece of it, which is who's in your community, who are your next door neighbors. The store down the street is within walking distance. I
Yeah.
know where to get my stuff when I need it. And so there it becomes that there's just not just this monetary element
Yeah.
to the home. It's just so much more important, and it really encompasses all of these aspects of your life that isn't just a number.
Yeah. Very interesting stuff. Vivianne, thank you for joining us to talk today.
Thank you so much for having me, Bruce. This is great.
Vivianne Gauci is a senior vice president at HomeEquity Bank. She was here to talk about their research connected to something called the golden triangle of happiness.